Getting through security can be the most stressful part of the process of getting on a flight. That's one of the reasons a lot of people like traveling by train, is because you don't have to go through that whole security process like you do at an airport. In the United States, security at airports is currently run by the TSA, or the Transportation Security Administration. They have blue shirt uniforms. If you would like to learn more about the history of the TSA and how it came about after the events of 9/11, be sure to check out this video up here. Before I talk about actually going through security, let me give you some general information about it. The way that security is set up at each individual airport is going to differ. So depending on the architecture, the layout of the airport, and where they have security set up, it's going to look a little different depending on what airport you're in. Don't let that throw you. Just kind of follow the signs, listen to where they're directing you to go, things like that. It's going to be generally the same order, but the setup will vary depending on the airport. Something else you might notice is that the TSA agents themselves, the people who are working for TSA, will vary a lot in how they behave and speak to you. It'll depend on the airport, it'll depend on the day, it'll depend on how busy it is, it'll depend on what kinds of things, if they have any alerts that they've been notified about that they have to be careful of. And this comes across in a couple different ways. One is in the way that the TSA agents will speak to you. And this can vary by each individual agent, even in the same airport. Some of them can be really stern and strict, and they'll even yell at you. Don't let that throw you off, okay? Try not to take it personally. They don't have anything against you as a person. They aren't really mad at you, That's part of what they do to create a serious environment and to make sure that passengers are taking this process seriously. It's also probably intended to scare people who are doing something wrong intentionally. They might yell at you. They might, really be barking out things, and it might be really intimidating and a little scary. Don't let that bother you. I mean, if you're doing everything to the best of your knowledge and ability, and you're following their instructions, you're not purposely trying to do something wrong, you're not goofing around, you're paying attention, you're not making jokes. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you shouldn't let that bother you, because it's just part of what they do, okay? But you do need to take it seriously. You should not be joking around. You should be focusing on what they're saying and listening to their instructions and being efficient in getting through the process so you're not holding things up. And you should also be ready to answer their questions, ready with your ID and your boarding pass if they need it, and getting quickly through the process with your stuff, which I'll talk about in a minute. On the other end of the spectrum, you might get TSA agents that are exceptionally friendly, humorous, stuff like that. You can enjoy their humor and smile a little bit, or, even laugh a little or whatever if they make a funny comment to you or something like that. But don't chit chat, okay? Don't get lulled into a sense of oh, they're so nice or whatever, and start chatting with them, because that's going to hold up the whole process too. It's fine if they're friendly and they smile at you. That can be nice. They're usually not going to do anything scary to your young kids. They're going to help them get through and stuff. But you still don't want to get caught up in their friendliness and be slowing up the process that way either. Along with that, make sure that you answer their questions that they ask you directly, but don't embellish. Just answer what they ask and don't say anything additional. If you have an issue that they need to be aware of, maybe you're a diabetic and you have an insulin pump on, or you have a pacemaker, or you have, some issue that they need to be aware of as far as getting you through the security, especially the body scanner or the metal detector, you need to make sure you tell them that, but you don't need to offer other information that isn't relevant to the security screening process. Okay, so here's a couple things that you need to know about going through security in general. If there's more than one security station, like I showed you at Terminal 1 at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, there's one on each end. If there's more than one of those, and it doesn't really make a difference as far as convenience to get to your gate, pick the one that has the shorter wait. That's just common sense. Don't purposely get in a line that's twice as long as the other one. And then be careful. There might be multiple lines. There's going to be the general or standard passenger line, which is almost everybody. There'll be a line for TSA PreCheck. That could also be the same line as for global entry, but that's usually when you're coming back into the country. There might be a separate line for priority, and then there might be a separate line for clear. Make sure you get in the correct line. I really feel that unless you fly a lot, like multiple times a month, I really have not found that those programs are worth the money that you spend for them. The vast majority of the time when we go through the standard passenger line, we get through there plenty quickly and don't really have any issues. The place that I've run into long lines and backups with security, if you will, is entering a country. Like when we entered France, when we landed in Paris, we waited in that line coming into France for an extremely long time, hour and a half, because we were American citizens, and there's a separate line for EU citizens to go through that's way quicker. Well, I can't help what my citizenship is, so that didn't really matter. It didn't matter that I had one of those programs. Maybe global entry would have helped me in that situation, but I mean, that was the one time that year that I was entering a country like that, and I just don't think that it's worth the money for that. Now, a lot of people will say that TSA PreCheck is worth it to them because they don't have to take off their shoes, they don't have to take off their belts, they don't have to take their laptops out of their bag, things like that. Yeah, that would be nice, but I still don't think it's any necessarily that much faster in getting through security. And in fact, sometimes the TSA PreCheck line is longer than the standard passenger line. So in that case, it's not making any difference. And the whole thing with having to take off your shoes and that's becoming less and less likely. In many other countries outside of the United States, you don't have to take off your shoes. And in some airports in the United States, and we've already encountered this, you don't have to take off your shoes because they have new, more modernized baggage screening equipment and, screening equipment for you, and you don't have to do that anymore there. And that's going to become everywhere eventually. I personally don't feel the need to pay for the programs that help me get through security faster, but that's completely a personal decision and depends on how much you're going to fly. For the sake of this video, say we're going through the standard TSA line that almost everybody goes through. At some point, that line, before you get to a TSA agent, the queue may split. We look for the line with what we can tell by observing them is the people who are faster and know what they're doing. Business travelers, people who obviously are ready to go, and that might not be the shorter line where it splits. But I don't want to get behind a family with a lot of little kids or a baby or a dog or something like that, because I know that's going to take longer. So we just kind of look at where the queue splits and we kind of judge the people that are in front of us, and we're like, okay, let's go this way. And that's a decision you can make. So, I mean, just go the way you feel comfortable with, but that is something that more frequent flyers will look for. The actual process of going through security screening is 2 parts. The first part is you will step up to a TSA agent in a blue shirt, and they will screen you, the passenger. The second part, once you get past that, is where you put all your stuff on the conveyor belt, and you have to take everything off and all that. Your stuff will go through a screening machine. It's kind of like a CT scanner, actually. It's not really just an X-ray. And you will go through one of 2 things. A full body scanner where you step on there's little feet on the bottom that shows you where to put your feet, and then you hold your arms up above you like this, and the thing goes around you like, whoop, whoop, and that's it. And then you step out. That is not showing you naked. It's not looking at your skeleton. It's nothing like that. In fact, after you step out, if you turn around and look back, you can see the little monitor that they're looking at. And all it is like the outline of a person. And it'll show maybe a spot that they want them to double check. So here or here or here or something, it'll just be like, look at that. And then they will say, okay, I'm going to pat down your neck, or I'm going to check your sleeve. And they'll say something, what they're going to check, and they'll just kind of pat you down. They'll just kind of check it. And it could be anything. Sometimes Megan will have like a necklace that'll set it off, or I don't know. They've stopped us lots of times, and it's no big deal. They literally just take 2 seconds to pat you. If you're female, they will usually have a female agent pat you. So there's always men and women TSA agents there. Basically, the first TSA agent, the one that you give your ID and possibly your boarding pass, and they'll tell you which one they need. And they might need both. What they're checking for is that you are authorized to take this flight, that you are okay, that you actually have a legitimate boarding pass, you have a ticket, you can actually go through security and get on an airplane. They're also checking to make sure you're not a terrorist. They're checking to make sure you're not somebody that they're looking for, stuff like that. They're also checking if you are younger, if you're a teenager, or if you're traveling with kids. They're also checking for a couple things specifically with kids and even like young adult women. They're checking for parental abduction, or any kind of abduction, really. The last time we flew, Ben just completely kind of spaced out on the fact that he had a driver's license now, and he had a real ID that he could have given to the TSA agent. And he did what he's always done up until this point, and just said, just went to him. And then the TSA agent started asking him what are parental abduction questions. So I had already gone first, and I was standing there, and he started asking Ben the questions. Who's this to you? And he's like, she's my mom. Okay, where are you going? Because if the kid doesn't know where they're going, that's suspicious. And they start asking them things like that. And the kid has to be prepared. If you're younger, you're going to have to be prepared to answer questions like that. They're going to ask you very direct questions. They might, for what seems like no reason at all, ask me a direct question. But then I stopped in the middle and I actually interrupted and I said, Ben, give him your ID. Because I knew that if he had a real ID and he had it on him, that TSA agent was immediately going to stop asking the questions because he knew Ben was fine. So then he did. And the TSA agent kind of like snapped at Ben a little like, hey, give me your ID. And, you should have known that. And if you're even a family and both parents are standing there, they got little kids, they still might ask the little kids questions. Who are these people? Where are you going with them? Because they want to make sure this is not a non-custodial parent or someone who's not a parent or guardian taking this kid out of state or the country or whatever against their parents' will or knowledge. This is the point that if you are traveling with a child, they might ask to see that you have written permission from the parent if you're traveling with a kid who's not yours. So, for example, say you're taking your niece to Disney World with you and she has a different last name than you do. They're going to notice that, and they're going to want to see that you have a notarized letter from your sister, brother, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, whoever her parents are, saying, yes, this person has permission to take my child with them to Disneyland or Disney World for these dates, and they're flying on this flight, and I give them my permission to do that and signed and notarized. I had to get that from Andrew's dad when I took Andrew to Europe when he was 10. I had the letter, but at the time, my passport had been updated to my married name, but they had just stuck it in a sticker in the back. And so when the UK passport control looked at our passports, it still said my maiden name, which is Andrew's last name, on both passports. And so he didn't even ask us anything because he was just like assumed it was my kid. So just there's situations like that. And if you are a teenager or a young adult traveling alone, you might get asked questions like that. Just because they want to make sure you're okay. Are you running away from home? What's going on with you? So just be prepared for questions like that. Just answer them succinctly. Just answer what they ask. Again, don't embellish. The other thing that they'd be checking for with young people or children or young adults is they're checking for human trafficking. Even with a young adult, they might ask you something because they want to make sure you're not in the process of about to be trafficked. You didn't get like a job offer, to go to this place or something weird like that. So that's the kind of things they're looking for with younger people. And so if you're a younger person traveling alone for the first time, or even if you're a child or a teenager traveling with your parents, the first TSA agent you come to is looking for that sort of stuff, and you need to be aware that that's what they're looking for. So you're not freaked out like, why are they asking me these questions? They're just trying to protect you. And if you're an adult and they ask you questions, they shouldn't really. If you have a legitimate real ID or you have a valid U.S. passport, you're a U.S. citizen, you don't have some scary criminal record that's going to pop up, you don't have any warrants out for your arrest or anything like that, it should be very quick, 2 seconds. I mean, they're going to verify. If you are wearing a mask, and lots of people still do wear masks flying and in airports, they will ask you to take your mask off for a minute so they can verify that your face matches your face on your ID. And then you can put it right back on. Okay, the second part of the TSA process is they're screening technically your physical person and your stuff. So what they're looking for there is anything that could potentially damage the aircraft or be used as a weapon. The TSA has a list of prohibited items. You do also want to make sure that you pay attention to the TSA's list of prohibited items for your checked luggage. They're not looking for weapons there necessarily because you can't access it on the plane. But if it's in the cargo hold and it could potentially cause a fire or an explosion, they need to make sure that you don't have anything like that in your checked bags. The big one there is lithium batteries. They really don't want those in the cargo hold of the plane. Those you have to take on the plane with you. Okay, but when you go through TSA, any of your carry-on stuff, what's in your purse, your backpack, your little roller bag or whatever it is, or anything on your person, they're again looking for anything that could be used as a weapon or anything that might cause damage to the plane, like could compromise cabin pressure or anything like that. I have noticed in recent years that the people who are scanning your bags, they are taking a significantly longer time to look at that. So you might be waiting at the other end after you go through the body scanner. The main things you want to be careful of at this point is that you don't have anything in your carry-on luggage that you shouldn't. For example, when we flew to Florida with my dad in 2022, he had a pocket knife. I think he had it on his person actually. And they took it away. They confiscated it. So if you have anything like that, you're going to lose it because they're not going to let you take it on the plane. So he was mad about it because he was mad they took his pocket knife. But I'm like, Dad, what the heck were you thinking? You don't bring that on the airplane. I mean, he should have known that. And he said he meant to leave it in the car and he forgot. So you can't do that. Don't bring a gun. Oh my gosh, you would not believe how many guns TSA confiscates at security. And most of them are loaded, which is really scary. What are you thinking? People don't do that, okay? You can bring a gun in your checked luggage, but there's specific requirements related to that you need to look up. But do not bring any kind of weapon, anything sharp, anything that could be used as a weapon in your carry-on luggage or on your person, please. The other thing that they're really kind of looking for is anything that, again, might explode. The reason that we have to take off our shoes is because of one specific guy who brought liquid chemical explosives onto an airplane many years ago now in his shoes. So that's why they make us take off our shoes. It's because of that. And they have to make sure you don't have anything hidden in your shoes. Little kids don't have to take off their shoes, and people over the age, I think it's 75, do not have to remove your shoes. So if you fall into one of those categories, you're good. Young children and elderly people also have a little different process when they go through the machines. If you have a baby, okay, now say you are traveling for the first time by yourself, but you are also traveling with your baby, they will not separate you from your baby, but if they're in a stroller, you have to remove the baby from the stroller, fold up the stroller, and put the stroller through the machine. And then they'll have you walk through with your baby. Service dogs should be trained enough to know that they have to wait. You will go through the scanner, and then your service dog will go through the scanner on their own. And the service dog should know that they should have to wait for you, and then you'll call them through. So if your dog can't do that, they're probably not an actual service dog. Pets, I'm not sure how they handle like cats in a carrier and things like that. I'm not exactly sure how they do that, but that's something that you could look up on the TSA's website, and I'm sure that the agents would help walk you through it if you had something like that. Okay, what do you have to put in the bin or on the conveyor belt? Now, this is where you really might get stressed because they're trying to move you through there as fast as possible to keep the line moving. And this is where they might be barking orders, is at this part. And you might not know, do I put this in? What do I do? You know, and this is where people have made like funny reels like, small child, just put him in the bin, you know, jackets on. No, not you, sir. You keep your jacket on. You know, like funny things like that. Now, if it seems to you every time you fly, this is for like everybody, that they're changing the rules on you, like, wait a second, yesterday they said this, but now they're saying this. Or at a different airport, they're saying, here you do this. If it seems like they're changing it all the time, it's not just you. They actually are doing that on purpose. TSA intentionally builds in unpredictability to the screening process to trip people up. They do that on purpose to make it complicated and hard to remember so that nobody can beat the system. That's purposeful and intentional on their part. They're doing that to mess with you. That way nobody can find a workaround, okay, and sneak something through. If you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, it makes it more likely that they'll catch you. So don't let that throw you off either, because that's there for a reason. Basically, for the average passenger, you should have nothing on you. Your glasses are fine. If you've got like a hair tie or something and it's already in your hair, that's fine. If you have a jacket or like a sweater and it's already on and like part of your outfit, that's fine. But you cannot have a jacket tied around your waist or a sweatshirt. You can't have anything tied around your waist. You can't have your shoes on, again, in some places. For example, I usually have a backpack. If I have a sweater or a jacket, I probably shoved it into my backpack because I don't want to have as much stuff. So I'll usually just have my backpack, my purse, if it's not already in my backpack, and my shoes. Some places want you to put the backpack in a bin and then through. Some places want you to put the backpack on the conveyor belt. Some places might change it from day to day. Whatever they tell you to do, do that. So I'll put like my backpack in one bin by itself and put it through. And then I'll put my purse and my shoes in another bin and put that through. If you have a laptop or a tablet or anything with a screen bigger than a cell phone, you need to take it out of whatever it's in and lay it on top so they can see it. And if you have liquids, it's the 3-1-1 rule. Your liquids, and this includes liquids, gels, creams, including like toothpaste. Peanut butter is considered a liquid. Water is definitely considered a liquid, but I mean travel-sized toiletries. They need to be 3.4 ounces or less. They need to be in a single quart-sized Ziploc bag. You can only have one bag. And you need to have put that stuff in an easily accessible place in your carry-on bag so that you can quick take it out and set that plastic Ziploc bag with your liquids in it on top of the rest of the stuff so they can see it. This, again, might be temporary and will eventually go away as they get more increasingly better scanning equipment. But for right now, that's what you need to do. So if you have any liquids of any kind, which me and my kids almost never do because we check our bags. There is no size rule for checked baggage for liquids. So you can have a full-size bottle of shampoo in your suitcase if you want to, if you checked it. But keep in mind, liquids are heavy. And they also can break, especially in the cargo hold of an airplane, which is going to be sub-zero temperatures. Your liquids, if you ever check stuff and then you get it out of your suitcase at your hotel when you get there, it'll be really cold. And it's possible that, if it spills or something in your suitcase, it could get all over your stuff. And it's heavy, which is going to add to the weight of your suitcase. All airlines have suitcase weight limits. If you go over the weight limit on your checked suitcase, it's going to be very expensive. The one thing I really want you to remember with liquids is lots of people do carry a bottle of water, a reusable bottle of water, or they have a plastic bottle of water. There can't be any water in that bottle when you go through security, okay? They're going to make you dump it out. They're going to have a thing there. This is where you dump out the water because so many people try to do it. You can't have any water in there. The reason they're scanning your liquids and the reason they're checking all that stuff is because the scanning equipment cannot distinguish between water or mouthwash or whatever it is, and chemicals. It doesn't have any way to do that. Now, watch this video. One time we had big suitcases and small suitcases, and Megan, just in her haste in packing, accidentally put her full-size bottle of contact solution in her small suitcase, which we ended up taking through security. But she was lucky, because she just bought the bottle. It was brand new and full. And it was a longer trip, and she's going to need it for her contacts. The TSA agent pulled her aside for additional screening and actually did a pH test on the contact solution right there in security. He was very careful not to touch the tip of it so the bottle wouldn't be ruined. But it was really cool, and we describe it in that video. So that is something they may do, and then he gave it back to her. If you do bring a bottle of water, as long as it's empty, you can take the empty bottle through security, and then you can fill it up on the other side. So fill it up with water. They'll even have those water refilling stations like at water fountains, or you can buy a bottle of water on the other side or whatever. There's some liquids that are permitted to be over the 3.4 ounces. And that would be things like baby formula or breast milk or certain types of medicines and things like that. There are some exceptions that TSA will help you with if you have stuff like that. They're not going to take away your baby's milk. But again, they might need to test it. So just be aware that might take a couple extra minutes. And then the last thing I want to tell you about this is you might get pulled aside. You might have gone through the body scanner and now you're standing there waiting for your stuff. And it's like they're looking at it forever. This happens to me a lot because I have a bag full of electronics and camera equipment and things in my backpack usually. And they'll be really looking at that because they can't tell what that stuff is. We've all had them pull us aside for extra screening, and they will take all our stuff out of our bag and look at it and ask us questions about it. What's this? Why do you have this? What's this for? So just follow their instructions. Do what they say. Don't argue. Okay, if they tell you you can't have this, you're going to just have to suck it up. You can't have it. There's been times that we knew that they were doing additional screening to help train new TSA officers. So it wasn't like there was necessarily anything wrong in our bag. It was just that it was a slow day at the airport and they were taking the time to help train new TSA officers. Like, okay, let's look at this and stuff like that. One time a TSA agent at Orlando airport completely emptied Ben's bag and put it all in the bin because she was really frustrated with the travelers that day, to show the rest of the travelers what you're supposed to do and how good this kid had done and like what he had in his bag and stuff. And they were asking him all these questions. What's this cord for? Because he had all this electronic stuff. What's this for? It was really funny. Ben was annoyed because then he had to put everything back in his backpack afterwards. But they might do something like that. I mean, you just have to be prepared for kind of anything when you go through TSA. You need to make sure you keep an eye on your stuff. TSA is not responsible for your belongings. Somebody can steal it. Don't leave your passport sitting on top of the pile of everything in your bin. Somebody could snatch it, or your wallet, or anything like that, your phone. Try to tuck those things away. Once you get past that first TSA agent, tuck your ID or your passport or whatever, at least in some pocket of some bag that you have. They're not going to want you to put it in your pocket though before you've gone through the body scanner. Don't leave it in a visible place on your bins on your stuff. At least put it inside something before you put the stuff through the x-ray machine. And then when your stuff comes back out, to make sure you get to your bins as quickly as you can. I mean, don't be shoving people out of the way, but get to your bins as quickly as you can and get your stuff back. You wouldn't believe how often people leave stuff. They forget it. Nobody ever really forgets your shoes because you're going to notice you don't have shoes on. But people forget their purses. They forget their laptops. I personally have had to run after people and say, hey, ma'am, you forgot your this, And you'll hear announcements in the airport. People will get paged to come back to security to collect their item that they left behind. So be careful that you know what you did put in there and make sure you take it all back out again on the other end. And then there will be benches after security purposely so people can sit down and get their shoes back on. This is why I always recommend wearing slip-on shoes at the airport. Wear slip-on shoes that you can easily just get in and out of. Now my kids, and I have too, sometimes you got to sit down and retie your shoes, and that's fine. That's why the benches are there. But it does help things go faster if you can just slip your shoes on and off. Also, wear a simple outfit, something that's not going to be complicated. If not right there at the benches, then like at the first place you find that you can sit somewhere in the airport on the other side, take a minute and like reorganize your stuff and get it back in the pockets you want and stuff like that. Anything that maybe you had to take out for security. So just so that you know where everything is. If you don't feel this way, I don't know, we can't imagine not feeling this way. The whole process of going security, it's a very high touch thing. You're touching bins that lots of other people have touched, touching your shoes and things like that. And when you go through security and you're all done, we always feel kind of hot because it's kind of a high stress thing and you're moving really fast and trying to get stuff through there. And also we always feel dirty. We always feel like our hands are dirty and the first thing that we want to do is wash them. That's a good idea too, just to prevent the spread of like, you know, sicknesses and things like that. Some airports have the bins that are like, you know, they're supposed to be antimicrobial, you know, where they repel germs and stuff, but I don't know. Some places they may not get cleaned at all. I don't know. I think it's a good idea for health reasons, for your own, you know, hygiene. As soon as you get through security and you're all reorganized, you get your shoes back on, go to the first restroom that you see and wash your hands real good. You might honestly have to go to the bathroom at that point anyway. So the entire process will likely, depending on how long the queue is before you get to the first TSA agent, it's likely going to take less than 5 minutes. Okay, it's not a long process. Even if you get pulled aside for additional screening or something, it's still only going to probably take about 5 minutes. So don't worry like you're going to miss your flight or something. If you did what you should have and allowed enough time at the airport before you got there, the 3 things that'll slow you down at the airport and could potentially make you late for your flight, depending on how busy the airport is that day. One is if you have to wait in a long line to check in or to check your bag or something because something went wrong with that process, which we've had that happen before. The second slow point is going to be security, potentially, but again, it would only be how long the queue is before you get to the TSA agent. From the time you get to the TSA agent until you're done with security is never going to be very long. That part's very quick. And then the third thing that could slow you down at the airport is how far away is your gate. If you have to traverse a very long distance in the airport, that can take a long time. And if you have like mobility issues or for some reason you're walking slower, you might want to check to see if they have services like a, you know, a little cart that they can take you there or something faster, or, you know, maybe request a wheelchair even, because if you can't quickly get to your gate, you could potentially miss your flight. Remember that the time of your flight on your ticket or your boarding pass is the time that the flight takes off. You need to be at the gate a good long time before that. There should be a boarding time on your boarding pass too. And it'll usually be 30 to 45 minutes before the actual flight time. That's when you need to be at the gate by. You need to be there by that boarding time before that, because that's when they're going to start boarding the plane. And the apps for most airlines will show where they're at in the boarding process in case you're not at the gate at that moment. But be careful because sometimes the boarding process on the app is a little delayed from what's actually happening at the gate. That's why I personally, even if I had access to an airport lounge, first of all, I don't want to be at the airport for such a long time that I would even have time to need to be in a lounge. But I don't feel comfortable not being at the gate. I want to be at the gate to be able to see what's happening and make sure they didn't change the gate or they didn't like start boarding early. Because if everybody's checked in, they'll go. If everybody's checked in for the flight, they'll start boarding. And if everybody is on the plane, they'll leave early if they can. They love doing that. That's why I just really prefer to be at the gate where I can see what's happening and I can hear the announcements, because it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to hear the gate announcements unless you're physically at the gate. If you have any questions about getting through security, please leave them in the comments below. Or if you have any helpful tips that you personally use to help you get through security quicker or easier, make sure you leave those in the comments below so everybody can learn from them. Thank you everyone for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate your support. of me and my channel. If you enjoy travel content like this or appreciate travel tips like this, I would really encourage you to subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming travel content. And while you're down there, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. Have a great day, everyone, and safe travels.